With the Sega Master System Plus special packs, you get the console, controllers, light gun, 2 games. It's such great value that now Dad's just as keen on getting one as me. Hey, Dad? Ow!
Do me a favour, plug me into a Sega.
Hi, I'm Tyler, and welcome to Player One Start. So the other day I was up near Chicago on vacation, and one of the things I like to do when I'm out on vacation is I like to take a look at some of the pawn shops or retro game stores they have around the area. More likely than not, I'm going to find something that I can't find in my area because I live in a lower populated area and I'm less likely to come across some rare things. Now, while in this store, I found something I never thought I'd see in person, at least not in a pawn shop. I saw a Sega Master System in the front case, and it was reasonably priced. I had the sales clerk take it out of the case and show it to me, and I decided to try it out and test it. We got a couple of games out of the bag, and to my amazement, it worked flawlessly. However, I ran into one problem. They would not sell it to me because of a city ordinance where whenever a pawn shop buys electronics, within 7 days, they have to run the serial number to make sure it's not something that has been reported stolen. So I had a problem to face. So I lived about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from the shop. And if I really wanted the console, I'd have to come back 7 days later to get it. Well, I must have been very dedicated because I did go back up there, and I'm very glad I did because I walked out of there with my very own Sega Master System. I came across this disc replay, and they sell almost anything from music, CDs, and vinyl to classic to modern video games. So here's what I ended up getting. I ended up getting the Sega Master System with a couple of controllers, the original AC power adapter, and AV cords. And I must say it's in pretty stand-up condition. It needed a little cleaning. There were a couple stickers I needed to take off of there, but nothing too terrible. I wanted to make sure the inside was just as clean as the outside, so I took it apart to do some further inspection. Alright, so here's a brief overview of the Sega Master System history here in the United States for those who may be unfamiliar with the console. First, it was released in 1985 in Japan as the Mark III. It's originally the successor to the SG-1000, which was Sega's first real home console. They did a redesign called the Mark II, but it was essentially the same console as the SG-1000. Everywhere else worldwide, the Sega Master System is known as the Sega Mark III, which was their third version of a home console. They decided to rebrand and redesign the Sega Master System for the US release.
Sega. Hot hits today, hot hits on the way. Plug into today's hottest arcade hits like Afterburner and Alien Syndrome, with even more red-hot arcade hits on the way, like Shinobi, only from Sega.
Part of the problem with the Sega Master System is that Nintendo had a strict licensing policy where if you develop games for the Nintendo Entertainment System, you are not allowed to produce or publish video games on any other platform. Eventually, Nintendo had to back off of this policy, but for the entire late 80s, it hurt the Sega Master System. And as a result, only sold about 2 million compared to Nintendo's 35 million units that they sold here in North America alone. Now, despite the lackluster sales in Japan and in North America, Europe and Brazil actually sold fairly well, and that was due to the lack of Nintendo support in those regions. So taking a look at the technology of the Sega Master System, you have 2 cartridge ports. You have the slot for the game cards that can go on the front, or you have the cartridge slot in the top where you could insert the Sega Master System game cartridge. The Sega Master System used a Z80 4MHz 8-bit processor, and it had a video chip capable of displaying 32 colors on screen at the same time out of a palette of about 64 colors. Alright, so now that we've had a look at the system itself, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the games that I got with it.
So the first game we're going to take a look at is Afterburner. So after a quick takeoff, you're given control of your own fighter plane. And the controls are fairly simple, although I'll tell you, every time you see me do a complete loop-de-loop 360, it's completely by mistake. I have no idea how I do that. But it looks like the gist of the game is to shoot down enemy aircraft without getting shot down yourself, and just keep going till you reach a high score. Now there's only at one point where, through my quick tutorial, I got to stage 2. They only give you so many shots at this, but as you'll see here in a little bit, I'll bite the dust. Overall, this game is kind of fun, but again, it's kind of lacking in terms of any sort of a storyline or why you're fighting or what you're fighting for. So I would definitely say this kind of ranks in the category of kind of like an arcade game. So that's as far as I got with Afterburner. Alright, let's take out another game for the Sega Master System, Rambo First Blood Part 2. Now, on the back of the case, you're given a bit of a storyline, but it's if you've ever seen a Rambo movie, it's fairly similar to the plot line. You're John Rambo, and you must go through with all your weapons, your M60 and your rocket launchers, and basically try to defeat the enemy forces, and you can play with 1 or 2 players. So let's load up the cartridge, and let's get started. Alright, so as you can see, the game is pretty straightforward. Kind of a top-down shooter here, kind of what you would see in a top-down level of Contra. Now up there it's kind of hard to see, but you can tell I have 3 lives, and it looks like I have 5 exploding arrows. I'll try to demonstrate those for you here in a little bit to see what those look like. But just basically avoid enemy fire while shooting at everyone else. The color palette that this game uses is, some people may find that level of brown, the dirt there, kind of unappealing, but I actually don't mind it. Good use of green. You can obviously tell you're in some sort of jungle. And there I just got hit. The only thing I can say is that my character moves really slow. Once you respawn, you can kind of hit where you want to start at. But your character moves very slow for all that. And then one thing I don't like about this is whenever you die and you get that game over screen, you can't skip over this music that happens. So you have to listen to that whole thing before you get back to the title screen. So I'm going to fast forward here and show you where I got to the end of Stage 1. This is after I died many times. and your goal is to get past this locked gate here. And from what I can tell, there's really no strategy except for to keep defeating enemies and don't die until that door starts flashing. And when it does, you can shoot a rocket into it. However, as soon as I got to stage 2, I very quickly died because I only had one man remaining, and this is the only time I got to stage 2. Even after replaying it several times, I didn't get back to stage 2 before I got tired of it. Taking a look at the controller, you can see it's very simplistic layout. You have the control pad or directional pad, you have a number 1 button and a number 2 button, which are your action buttons, and number 1 also duplicates as your start, as there is no separated start button. I decided while I have it out that I would take it and clean it up a little bit, and I think it turned out very nice. I decided it was time to turn my attention back to the case plastic, and I decided to use some Goo Gone to get these stickers off. I've had better luck with it. I've seen other people who've used alcohol or other cleaners. This won't hurt the plastic at all if you just use a little dab on like a cotton swab or something. And what I do is I'll have it soak up a little bit. So I just kind of dab it and then let it soak for a little bit. And then while I was letting that soak, I decided to turn my attention to the other side. And here's what it looked like when we were all done cleaning that off. Now once I got most of the sticker residue off, I decided to use some alcohol to kind of clean up the rest of the plastic. There were a lot of dirt marks and scuff marks on here, and I wanted to get those off of there. And then I used a Q-tip to get into those hard to reach spots like the cartridge ports and the controller ports. Once I had it clean, I decided to put the unit back together. So overall, I think this turned out very nice. It definitely looks a lot better than it did.
So what are my thoughts on the Sega Master System? Well, I may not be the best to judge because I didn't grow up with the Sega Master System. I had a Nintendo Entertainment System, and up until I started collecting game systems in the 2000s, I wasn't even aware of its existence. So I think that the Sega Master System, while technologically superior, really lacked the game library of the Nintendo Entertainment System. And unless you're a hardcore collector, you really don't need to access, or you don't really need to collect a Sega Master System, except for the fact to say that you have one. I think that if the licensing agreement had been different with Nintendo, the Sega Master System would have had a lot better success, especially here in North America. And to take my basis for that is, if you look at the Sega Genesis sales, at one point in time, Nintendo was losing to Sega. There was over 50% market share that the Genesis had when games could be released for both the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. So overall, I think it was potentially a great system that, due to the licensing issues and due to Sega's inexperience in the markets, it kind of gets a bum rap. Okay, well that about wraps it up with this video. Stay tuned for future content as I'm working on some other videos to throw in the fray out there. If you liked what you saw, please remember to like and subscribe. Feel free to share with your friends, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.